Punctuality Podcast Premium. This is the series where we're going to be talking about things that are different than the normal one, and it'll be like slightly different groups. This one is the anime episode. I'm Kite. I'm the one with the pink and green toaster picture. I've been watching anime seasonally since like 2013, and just normally like on Toonami and stuff since way longer. I've seen like 500 shows. I'm a big watcher, and yeah, today we're gonna be talking about Girls' Last Tour. Seventh Disaster is to my left, so you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, that would be me. My full internet alias would be Seventh Disaster, but people will probably just call me Sev or Seventh here. I've also been watching for about as long as Kite has. I probably started just a little earlier, maybe, but he's still like he's watched more than me, like in general. In total, I've watched over, say, 300 full shows if you count if you don't decide to count sequels and OS and the general. But yeah, that's about. I'll be the one with the black and white profile picture with the big S. Yep.
Cool.
That's
and my name is Cappy Tank, or Cappy, Kapi or whatever. So I'm definitely the outlier in this group because I've been watching anime consistently for about 2 years now. I've watched about 25 full shows, so that's definitely not as good as the other two. But hopefully, I can um, add some depth
Perspective.
or whatever to these conversations. Yeah, some perspective.
You're a
on the
perspective
show,
of someone that doesn't
anime in general.
just like
Yeah.
super binge.
Yeah. Definitely casual watcher, but I definitely respect the art. So yeah, that's me. I'm on the far left on the red car driving on the road.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, so we're talking about Girls' Last Tour. It's like a show that aired in fall 2017. We all watched the show like as it was coming out together. I rewatched it. Cappy rewatched it. Seth hasn't.
I didn't.
Yeah, but you remember it's only like a year ago, right?
Yeah. I remember most of it.
So just general opinions of it first, I guess. Uh, I'll go first just because I guess I'm hosting or whatever. I thought it was okay when I first watched it. I wasn't like super into it. I had like a little bit of problems with like the pacing. I felt like they sort of like had some of the really interesting stuff happen early, but upon rewatch, I liked it a lot more actually, and upon like thinking about it more, I guess uh, the show has some really, really, really obvious themes that I sort of missed or I didn't even really think about. The characters pretty much say like vaguely philosophical stuff constantly, like what's the meaning of life, and the character will just like blankly say that, and it won't be like a well, if you look at it closely, the show's really about like what does life mean. It's literally like a character saying, hey, what's the meaning of life, and then another character will answer them. So like I don't know, how I missed it the first time around. Well, not missed it, but I guess I just sort of like zoned out, didn't really think of anything deeper of it. But yeah, um, upon rewatch, actually, I really liked it.
Yeah.
All right. I guess I'll go next. As someone who didn't rewatch it, I only watched it once during the time it was releasing, and I can simply say that I absolutely loved the show when I was watching it. It was, especially in terms of how it decided to like pace itself, and it showed off this destroyed world as a lot more beautiful than it really was, kind of, if you get what I mean. They were like exploring this like strange area, and I absolutely love that gist of it. The way they like played around in the snow, the way the way these two characters like interact with each other on such a casual way in an environment that's basically destroyed. I thought that was like really beautiful. And on top of that, it has an amazing soundtrack for those times where there actually is sound. And I like to focus a lot on visuals and how things look, and I absolutely love that. That was great. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, to mention the visuals, That's a really big part of why I like the show because the character designs are kind of, they're cute, chibi, a little minimalistic, and then the the environments and the backgrounds are really detailed, and the machinery and all that. I feel like that's a big part of the show. Um, all the like twisted pipes in the snow and all the metal surrounding them as they explore the world. Um, but I mean, in a more general sense, um, when I watched this show originally, it was kind of a mishmash of emotions. It was, well, I think we can all agree on this, but back then it felt like I thought the show was really depressing. But after watching it the second time, I I it's the dynamic of it being cute slice of life in this sort of like this unknowing like world that you can't see, or like two like a couple days from now you don't know where you're going to be. Dynamic
Yeah,
is really sort
definitely.
of the it's really the it's really what the show does best, and the interactions between these characters is very organic, dynamic, and really gives you a sense of of how they're basically used to living in this world at that point.
Yeah,
So yeah, and like Steph said, the soundtrack, um, it's not super memorable because it's mostly just like symphony kind of stuff. But when you're in the episode and you're listening to it, you're like, oh wow, this is. So yeah, that's my general thoughts about
yeah. One thing that you mentioned there was about how like when you watch it again, it's like soothing. A lot of people talked about like I read a bunch of analysis before I started this. And like some of them mentioned the fact that it's like Iyashike, which is just the whole like uh it's supposed to be relaxing that you just like watch to unwind after a hard day of work or whatever, right? And I feel like
it.
that is not true at all until you know for a fact that nothing bad's gonna happen. Like the world is built in this
Yes.
way that like very obviously bad stuff could happen very easily. So when you're watching it the second time and
Hmm.
you know nothing like actually that bad ever happens, it's like pretty relaxing. But I did not
Yeah.
get. A lot of people got the impression that like from the start that like of course it's just like it's a bleak world, but nothing bad is gonna happen because this is nice, soothing Yashike. But like I definitely did not get that sense the first time through. It was more like, oh God, I
Hmm.
hope nothing bad happens to them. But the second time when like, oh hey, nothing bad is going to happen to them, you can just like enjoy the fact that yeah, there are a lot of moments and
Yeah.
that are just soothing, nice.
Like, yeah. I don't know how in depth you, or at least this early into the talk, or like how in depth about certain scenes. Um, but just for like an example, the very first episode when you're not super used to these characters yet, um, when you just suddenly turns around and like points the gun in She's face, and you're like, oh shit, what the fuck's happening? But you don't know because you're not used to these characters, and then it was just a meme. And then
Yeah,
like all these things, these scenarios that they're in, that you can just think of a million different ways about how they can fucking die, but
Yeah,
nothing
you could
happens. So yeah, in the second time through, it was definitely like you.
even as someone who hasn't watched the anime a second time, I can tell that there's probably a massive difference in like how you feel about watching the show the first time and the second time through.
yeah. I mean,
It's
some.
like
Oh, so you.
yeah, I feel like there's when you know what's going to happen, and when you don't in this specific scenario will be very different because take the example you mentioned where Yuri points her gun at Cheeto. Uh, that's one of the most monkest scenes you see during the first few episodes on your first watch because you're like, oh shit, is she actually gonna shoot just for this piece of the food, right?
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
then later on, you realize that, oh, all right, these characters are actually like they depend on each other a lot, so she really shouldn't have done that. But on like later watch throughs, you'll realize that, oh, okay, nothing bad's gonna
yeah,
happen, so I can rest assured with this scene.
yeah. It's like I don't even know how to put it exactly, but like some of the people that were talking about it, some of the analysis I read, like they just seemed to know, like maybe because they read the genre tags or something, but they just like knew nothing bad was going to happen, or whatever. Maybe they just like picked up on stuff via like subtler elements. But yeah, for me, like I always assumed disaster was like a second away. And to be fair to some of the side characters, it is. Most of the side characters, it is. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, to the main two, nothing like super bad ever happens.
Yeah.
So and
I
they're
think the
the
close
oh, yeah.
I think the closest we get to something really bad happening are the scenes where they almost fall off of very, very tall places.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
I assume those still are very like monkish to watch when you even on the second time through, even though you know they're gonna be fine, it's still gonna be pretty gut wrenching to watch things happen, especially if you're afraid of heights.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Kanazawa like losing his papers when they're all about to fall off too. That's always really or by papers I mean maps. That's always that feels awful even the second time through.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
Ishii's playing.
Yeah. Yeah. About or while I was watching that, I knew like right when it was about to happen, I suddenly remembered that the plane was gonna fuck up, but I didn't remember that she was safe. So when it happened, I was like, "Oh no!" And then it's like, "Oh, she's on the little parachute," and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's just all of her life's work down the drain." But hey, she's fine, so it's okay.
Yeah. Um.
I feel like there's a running theme of characters falling down from huge heights in this one.
Yeah,
Being very close to at least.
Yeah. There's a lot of height-based
yeah,
scares.
I think
There's
one of the scenes that scared me the most was definitely the one where they're climbing the tower using the vehicle and the tower's falling apart.
yeah. Yeah. That
The
yeah,
that's like
outskirts of it.
the other really big one, and then no one's ever gonna climb that tower again. And it was like it was already too. The path they were using was like a secondary path that someone built because the main path had already broken down. Um,
Yeah.
and then yeah, they barely make it up the secondary path, and it completely collapses. So then like no one can ever go up it again. Well, or they can build a secondary
mhm,
path again, I guess. But I don't know if that world has people that can build paths anymore.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
We're often left questioning how many people are actually like left in that world too. Like we see a few, but that's a very meager few.
yeah,
Yeah, it's. I think it's sort of like I mean, it's not directly stated, but I think it's pretty heavily implied that like there's very, very few people left. One of the things like that people have talked or people like other people that did analysis of it or whatever looked at or assumed happened is like there was two wars in the world. So obviously war is what destroyed the world, right? Um,
Yeah.
mhm,
So like in the first episode, you see like a bunch of guns and stuff lying around that kind of looks like I think it's World War I era stuff, not two, but maybe two. I mean I don't know my war history and I don't remember what I read exactly. Um, but yeah, it's a
mhm,
bunch of like World War I, World War II era, just like weapons lying around. But then later you get that like giant robot that like melts everything, right? The one that
Yeah.
yeah,
and there's nukes and stuff. That the little creatures are eating, the Nucos, I think what they're called, or the cats. Or cuts is
Yeah.
what they call them in English. Yeah, this was the guy that said this. I'm pretty sure is Infinite Zenith of Infinite Mirai WordPress. I wanna plagiarize, but yeah, like his assumption was there was two wars that happened, right? The first one, the people that had like the super advanced weapons fought, and in doing so, a lot of like the ability to make these super advanced weapons was lost in the super advanced societies. But because they had reverence for their weapons, sort of like how we understand nukes are very very bad, so it's fairly unlikely that we'll ever have like a major nuclear war because we understand what that would mean, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
They stopped early enough that like while a lot of stuff was damaged, people were still around, and it wasn't like a not everyone was wiped out, right?
Yeah.
But the weapons remained, and then the new group of people uh didn't actually have like as much reverence for it because that was from a long time ago, and the technological like advancements didn't keep going. They reversed basically, or yeah, a lot of like the high end people were lost. So there was a second war, and they ended up using those super advanced weapons they didn't really understand, and they didn't stop early enough, and it led to almost everyone dying because these people could only make like World War One era weapons, and they were trying to responsibly use these robots that can destroy entire cities in like 1 second. Right? They didn't
Yeah.
understand the
Yeah.
scope. They didn't understand like how it would like what would happen, and then they fucked up, and pretty much everyone died.
I like that. I like that theory a lot because it really it kind of fills in the discrepancies between like how old some of the weapons you see. For example, the weapon Yuri's always holding seems to be a lot older than some of the technology they come across very often.
Yeah, the Kettenkrads, like I didn't
Yeah.
realize that's a real vehicle. Um, I don't know. I think it's World War One or World War Two. Yeah, I can't remember, but yeah, that's a real vehicle that actually exists in real life, and it's like from
Yeah.
80, 90 years ago or whatever,
I
right?
think it'd probably be
Yeah.
World War Two,
World War Two. I'll Google real quick.
maybe. Yeah.
I googled Kettenkrad and I find a figure of these anime characters in them.
Yeah. Oh, 1939 for the Kettenkrad. So yeah, this is World War Two. So I think most of the stuff is
Yeah,
from World
yeah.
War
I
Two.
felt the mechanics seemed a little too advanced for what World War
Yeah.
One or whatever.
So a lot of the weaponry is like World War Two era.
Yeah.
But then you randomly have these like the super tech, and the fact that like all these cities are built like in these upwards, right? Whereas like we build upwards like with skyscrapers, but that's about as far as we can go. And these are like entire like cities built on top of like layers and another layer and then another city, right? We definitely can't do stuff like that right now. So there was some
Yeah.
super advanced society at one point that was doing crazy stuff, and then afterwards there was a World War II era society, and then there was nothing.
Yeah, I often question the structural integrity of how these cities are laid out because it seems like any sort of shift on like say the bottom layer would cause the entire place to collapse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
It's
the fact
super pretty.
thinking about that during the first watch makes it seem very it makes it seem very scary that Cheeto and Yuri are going upwards all the time.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely it's definitely spooky. There's also like a thing that I can't remember if the show directly says this or not, but it's sort of implied, I think, that like the higher up you go, things are like in better shape. So uh, it was probably like the rich people lived at the top layers, the poor people lived at the bottom layers. That's why they're going up. Is like the assumption that things will be better off there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like a not a criticism, but like a observation of society where like if even when really bad stuff happens, the rich get off a little bit better than the poor, at least. So like
Yeah.
For sure.
the first layer they get to, not the first layer, but the first layer up they get to is the one with like the cat statues everywhere. Or I guess the cut statues probably, right? Because it looks a lot like the cuts they run into later. Um, and like the houses are still around and working for the most part. Um, I think electricity's like there a little bit too. Obviously, there's like very
Yeah.
little food left, but it's still sort of kind of existing.
Yeah.
Um, to talk about um the fact that they don't outright say about the past and like the wars or whatever. I feel like that's a really genius sort of way to go about it because it makes you it kind of puts you at the same level as the main characters because they're born into this world they don't know or like they've lost like the history or whatever. They just have to live with the consequences of what happened in the past. So they don't really know for sure. So you're kind of on that same level as them. Because I feel like knowing what happens and just seeing them mess around with the consequences sort of disconnects you from them.
Yeah, this is like that's sort of like another little thing that people talked about. This is again the same person, Infinite Zenith guy at Infinite Mirai WordPress. He talked about a little bit that like uh, this is not directly history, but I think it applies to history too, where it's just like, you know, that um complex societies, uh, if they lose their like engineers and stuff, or they lose like yeah, the people that truly understand how to make, like, even now, like, if we lost all of our computer programmers just like today, even with the stuff they leave behind, we might not be able to ever actually understand it, right? Like,
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
if we lose the books, we definitely will never recreate it. We might make other stuff that's like on the same level, but it would be completely different because like, yeah, and when they lost it, they lost the history, so we're on the same level as them. We're just like all they can do is guess. And you have like Cheeto like reads a lot of books, so like sometimes she'll posit like an answer to something that she read in a book, and sometimes it's right, but a lot of times, like, I think she mentioned the fact that the ocean is blue because it reflects the blue in the sky or something. That's definitely something we used to exist, or we used to think.
Use
Um,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
definitely is not how it works anymore, or not anymore. Never how it worked, and not what we think anymore. But yeah, she read it in some old book where they thought that was how it worked, and she just assumes this is how it works now because the books lied to her, and she had no reason to think it would lie to her, and she can't think of any possible reason it would be blue otherwise.
Yeah, they don't have any
yeah,
reason to believe otherwise because they don't have any other basis to go off of other than what they're told.
Yep. So they just have
yeah.
to assume that whatever it is real.
The analogy you made that if all of our computer programmers died right now, and we would have no idea how to use the things they've created, that's pretty true because a lot of computer programmers create things that not even they understand.
Yeah.
Talking about AIs here, so
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering how that kind of fact, as you can tell, there are creatures, or well, there are robots in that world that have quote unquote sentience.
Yeah.
I don't think you can call it that, but they seem very advanced, and I don't think there's any hope of anybody to figure out how those robots work.
Yeah. The robots are at least programmed to like think they have sentience, or even they might even know they don't, but they're programmed to act like they have empathy and like, yeah. So at that point, it's sort
Yeah.
of that's like a major question, like that I think the show asks or whatever is like, does that AI count as life? Um, the one that you meet, I think it's like episode 7. Let me look real quick to make sure. Oh,
Uh,
definitely not 7. It's maybe 9. It's
may-
9.
maybe,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know it's
I,
definitely later on
yeah,
for
it's
that.
9. It's the one where you meet. There's like a fish. There's one fish that's still alive in this little like aquarium, and there's like a little robot that is
Yeah,
supposed to
the
tell
robot.
people about the aquarium. Um, and then there's like the bigger robot that is deconstructs things. And the little robot can talk to the bigger robot and can talk to them. Um, and it seems like it has like desires and feelings, and like, does that is it alive? Also, this is like a thing we can talk about for us. Like, are, do we think animals, like, is animal life equivalent to human life? We're none of us are vegans, right?
No,
Yeah.
Okay, so I
I
think we
don't
all
think
sort
so.
of
But
agree that it's not. Human life is inherently more
hum-
valuable.
yes, I think the way it works is that human life is inherently more valuable to us,
Yeah, because
and
we are humans.
we shouldn't need
For
to
sure.
consider other animals to be like equivalent to us. Like, take if you take, for example, I don't know, just take a random animal like a cat. They probably value their own life, aka cats' lives, more than they value human lives
Yeah,
in that sense.
yeah,
But they don't view us as superior or anything like that. So in that theory, that's just how nature works.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I I can agree with that. I don't want to get too deep in the vegan memes because I don't want
Yeah, me
to
neither.
alienate people. But yeah,
But
none of us none of us are vegans, so I think we can all probably pretty easily say that like AI and life are probably not the exact same, but like it can get dangerous, not dangerous. It can get like creepily close, and it definitely does. Little AI
Yeah.
attendant guy is
Ah,
like one of the more
It,
interesting characters in the show.
yeah,
it,
yeah. I wanna.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just my spiel real quick. So I feel like so like Kite said, in a sort of ironic twist, is really it adds a lot of humanity in a way to the dynamic. Because he's just trying to like fish, and I feel like the thing about what is considered life, I feel like it's if I was in their position and there was a robot there that could like empathy and like emotion, I might probably just say, well, that's probably good enough.
Yeah,
But but yeah, yeah, if it was like nowadays, I'd be like, no, like this guy right next to me, or like these people in my town are more human than this robot.
I think that's like an interesting point with like when you're in a world where like what alive thing do they come across the whole series? Like so it's Shido and Yuri, then
Yep,
it's
you
Kanazawa
other humans basically,
and
and
Ishii,
yeah,
and then the one fish, and then the cuts,
Yeah,
right? Those are the only biological alive things that come across the whole series. So it's like six things because I guess the cuts sort of a collective, right? They
yeah.
seem like the
Even
hive mind.
then, we barely know if Cuts is actually like an organic like
Yeah,
natural creation and not something created by humans back in the day.
that's definitely possible too.
yeah,
Um, so at that point, like if you count the robots, even counting the robots, you're only up to eight alive things that you've seen the entire time, and that's counting animals and robots both, right? If you count neither, it's four.
yeah,
Um, and if you don't count yourself, if you're one of the people in there, then it's down to three. So it's like it's easy to understand why their definition of life would be broader because it's just so few things to categorize under alive for them.
Yeah,
yeah. And I think it's exemplified when, because I'm pretty sure it's implied that the show takes place over like not like a super long period of time, but like going from like super big point to super big point is probably like a week, maybe even longer
Yeah,
of this of them just like walking, seeing nothing.
I think the seasons change at least twice, but I'm not 100% sure. So, or maybe just once because they come when they come out, it's like snowing everywhere, and eventually the
Yeah.
snow melts, right? And it's not
Hmm.
exclusively because they're
this
moving to different places, but it's partially that I think.
I might be misremembering, but didn't it snow during the last episodes as well?
It did, so that it's possible that it was all just in like a winter that was just like a warm day, but um, there was definitely snow melt. There was also snow melt because there was like hot water, but I think the snow melted like partially. Oh, actually, I mean it's been like only like a month since I watched, but uh, maybe it all takes place just within the winter, or actually it could also be that it's like nuclear winter and it's always cold, no
Oh
matter
yeah,
what
that's true.
season it is. So
Oh, okay.
now that I think about it, going by the weather,
That's actually a fair argument there.
yeah, going by the weather is maybe not necessarily the best way to try to tell if seasons have gone by or anything, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
we know they talk about their food fairly often, and we see them
yeah.
get new food.
What else is there
When
to talk
So,
about?
so you could like
when
I don't
we
know, try to go by food.
when we talk about food in general, in this show, there's a very, very, very low supply of it
Yeah.
by the looks
Yeah.
of it. The only thing we basically see everywhere are rations, and I think we saw bread once, right?
Uh,
Or like cookies. I don't
it
know.
was
What was it?
potatoes, but they were really
Potatoes. Yeah.
weird looking. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
they were like some GMO weird shit potato.
yeah, and that's the thing that Ishii had. She had a bunch of potatoes, and then
Hmm.
they went to the potato like factory and found the last
And tried
one,
to.
and then they
Hmm.
used it to make more rations. Because they also had like a bunch of
Yeah.
other like they had like sugar, salt. I can't remember. They had other stuff too. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, they
Yeah,
Yeah.
they just made more like dough, potato dough, and cooked little ration sticks.
Yeah, and I
But
think that's a less.
considering
Oh, yeah.
considering the only thing they basically eat throughout the entire show is rations, we can basically see that there obviously there was a war, and that war took such a high priority that there wasn't much time to create any other type of food other than rations
Yeah.
during the time.
Yeah.
They also don't know one of the rations is cheese flavored, and they don't know what that is. I think later, oh god, later I think they read like a label that mentioned cheese. And I don't think it was there anymore. But yeah, so they start realizing that cheese was like its own food. Um, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Didn't they eat a chocolate one early on, and they didn't know what that was either?
yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll read like what the flavors are occasionally, and they'll never really know what they are, or know that they existed as like its own thing. Um,
Mhm.
they just know the flavor. The thing you said though, Sev too, is directly like stated at one point by them. I can't remember which character. I think it was Yuri was asking Cheeto. Was like, how come there's all these weapons, but there's no food? Basically, like, why?
Yeah.
If we had a society that could create these World War II weapons, why didn't we make enough food? And the answer to that is just sort of like a shoulder shrug, and I don't know,
Shrug. The soldiers are probably gonna die anyway, so they don't need to eat.
eh, I
Is
think
that man?
that's in like the very first episode. And I think they talk a little bit about like um when there's limited amount of something, people use force to take it. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Using
having
the example of pointing the gun.
yeah, and that's why you ends up pointing the gun is it's because like Cheetos mentions like, oh yeah, well I mean they wanted something and so they used force to take it, and then the other side tried to use force to not let it be taken or to take it back, and yeah, that's why they just kept making guns. And then yeah, so she uses her gun to take the food as like that the show crystallizing that idea of using force to take what you want.
Yeah. On the topic of consumables, when it comes to what the girls drink, the only things we see them drink is ever like water in a can or alcohol at one point.
Yeah, just like that one time they find.
Mhm.
I don't. Was it like multiple or was it just one like big container of alcohol? I think it was like two or
They
three.
found I think it wasn't it one container that actually had alcohol left in it.
Oh, it might have been. It might have been they found like two or three, and only one of them had stuff left.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then they drank it all in like one sitting. And didn't realize
So
what getting drunk was or anything because they'd never seen it.
yep. So alcohol was obviously still relevant during this war, like it's always been.
Yep, it's been for this is not about Girls Last Tour at all, but just something I learned. Apparently, part of the reason alcohol exists is like before we had clean water consistently, the way to make water clean is you have to boil it, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But boiled water tastes really, really bad. So people were like, what can we put in boiled water to maybe make it taste less bad? And that's how alcohol got like started. So people drank a lot of alcohol back in the day because like while alcohol tastes awful, I guess they thought it tasted less awful than boiled water by itself. Um, so that's how it got
Oh
started, and
no.
then it became a mainstay forever. But yeah, that's apparently that's the start. To be fair, I just read this on some website. I don't even remember where, so maybe this is misinformed. But it made sense to me, so I'll say it as a
Yeah.
potentially fun factoid.
I I heard it from you, so it makes sense to me now too.
Yeah, because I can't imagine why
Yeah.
anyone would make alcohol and want to drink it otherwise. Because that stuff is gross.
Yeah. Ooh.
Alcohol
Let's see.
taste, not all alcohol. Some alcoholic drinks taste fine, but yeah, the general alcohol taste is very not good.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Let's see.
But yeah.
In a more general sense
Mhm.
of the show in general, I don't know if y'all felt this, but or Kite, because he's the only one who watched it the second time. Maybe Seven might probably. But at first, the first time watching it through, the show was very, it was like, oh, okay, this is depressing, but it's also kind of cute or whatever. The second time is a lot more emotional, I guess, because like for example, in the first episode, when they're at the very beginning when they're in that dark chamber or whatever, and they're talking really casually, like this is like every day for them, and they're just like, oh, I don't know where we're going, or even if we'll find food when we get there, and it's like, oh god, but they're
Yeah.
still happy or whatever. So then I think what it exemplified it is like the first episode, it didn't have the opening song or whatever, the opening introduction.
Hmm.
That started in the second episode, and that's a really upbeat song. So in the second episode, after you know, I guess just seeing them used to this like really depressing world, and then the happy song starts up, and like it made me like tear up a little bit because I was like, oh shit, I remember why I like the show now. They're just such the weird like dynamic. It's done really really beautifully.
Yeah, there's like a really big contrast between like the world and how they perceive the world. Um, this is
Yeah.
another thing. This one I'm stealing from a lot of people actually. This is not just like a one person um thing, but uh, there was like a lot of people talking about like minimalism in general, and then there was like a sort of like theme of like with so little to do, almost everything becomes more interesting, right? So like while we look at that world and we're like, man, literally all of your time is spent going from place to place looking for food. That sounds pretty awful, right? Um,
Yeah.
because that's all they know, it's not bad. And like I think like a crystallization of that is too the episode with the rain and the music, that sort of or quote unquote music that like that they put a bunch of like pots and pans and stuff out to like make the rain
I
hit it.
love I love that scene so much.
Yeah, it's really nice. And like to us, that's sort of like it's not because of the way the show frames it. It's pretty cool. But like imagining in real life if it rained and you put a bunch of pots and pans, the noises it would make, like that doesn't. It wouldn't be interesting, right? It would be pretty dull. But
It would be pretty dull.
in the show, the way they perceive the music of it happening, and the way the music, they write the music for the show because it's from their perspective, right? It's like a really nice,
Yeah.
interesting song, and it's great. Um, so sort of like because they don't have much, every little thing becomes even better.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
specific scene too, it's such a nice contrast of everything because rain and like that kind of weather is normally really cold and bad, right?
Hmm.
But the way they perceive it and the way that music sounds, it can remind you of sort of sitting indoors while hearing the rain pour outside, and that's kind of like a warming feeling. So it's like it combines this feeling of cold and bad weather with heartwarming and fun, which is such a good song. I absolutely love that song.
Yeah, definitely.
If you ever want to listen to it, it's called Ame Dare no Uta.
I
It's
really
the
like the
actual.
listening to the rain thing. Also, I'll probably listen to the song
Yeah.
again. I liked it listening through the show again.
Hmm.
I actually didn't listen to any of the soundtrack after watching it, but it's sort of like it's like a background soundtrack type thing for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely
Yeah.
not full of songs aside from the OP and the ED that like demand being listened to and paid attention to while you're listening. It's more like backgroundy stuff, which makes sense because it's a show that is like stuff. There's stuff going on that isn't just the music, but that's probably the next most like prominent song that I can think of.
Yeah, for sure.
Because in the show everything sort of stops just so you can like listen to it for a while.
Speaking of this show's soundtrack, I've this is one of those few shows where I've actually gone and found the like OP and ED and other various soundtracks like the Rain song and downloaded them and listened to them on multiple occasions. I absolutely love the music in this show.
Yeah,
It's so nice.
Yeah. I do. I do too. So relaxed.
It's very relaxing. It's playful, and it really makes the world seem a lot less bleak than it is.
Yeah.
yeah. I, I think like a big theme of the show or whatever is that like while we view it the world is really bleak and bad because they don't know any better or whatever, it isn't to them. And there's this is like getting into like one of the things some of the people talked about was like what makes life worth living, and they asked the question, you know, after Kanazawa loses his maps, right?
Hmm.
And the question the answer they basically come to by the end of the episode, Yuri and Cheeto, is just like, well, sometimes things are okay, and it's worth living because hey, tomorrow there might be something that's like kind of cool that happens. So even if like the vast majority of days are boring and nothing really happens, and like or even so the stuff that does happen is bad, it's worth it's worth living just to live, basically, because you never know when the next like cool moment is around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, compared to say our current year as an example, making life worth living is a whole lot different for us than it is for these characters, considering we have everything that we can do at any given time, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to go out and search for food in order to survive. We don't have to go out and hunt. We don't have to go and do any of that. We basically we get all our food almost delivered to us if we want to.
Yep.
But in comparison to that, we might view things like taking a shower or doing things as like a chore. To these characters, taking like a one single warm bath is paradise.
Yep. It's
And to
definitely
us, that's just something we take for granted. That's something we just have.
it's definitely like because of our different circumstances, different things have like different value associated with it, and like yeah, like a shower doesn't really mean anything to us. In fact, when I don't, I think this is a fairly universal thing, but like I really like showers now, but when I was a kid, I was not a fan of them at all.
Yeah,
Bathing,
I agree with
showering,
you
like
wholeheartedly.
I wanted to have fun. I wanted to play games. I wanted to do whatever, right? So it's like that was time away from doing the stuff I wanted to do. Um,
Yeah, taking a shower, going to sleep, those like things. No, didn't want to do that.
yep,
But now those things are hella amazing.
yeah. As I got older, both of them became more things that I enjoyed doing, and like when I was a kid, I could easily go like 2, 3, 4 days without showering, and I wouldn't care at all. Now it's like if I've exercised and gone even 24 hours without showering, I'm like, man, I'm gonna kill myself. Like it's so
It feels
I
so
feel
gross.
gross. I don't like it. I just need to get in the shower as soon as possible. This is a kid. Like I'd probably be. I can just imagine the smell now. I must have been so
Yeah.
stinky, but like it didn't matter to me at all. I was nose blind and completely like I didn't even feel the gross like at all. It just wasn't a
Yeah.
factor.
Gross was like barely not a thing. I
Yeah.
think ever since I was a kid, I've always hated getting shit on my hands. But
Mhm.
this, like right now, that feeling is like multiplied compared to what it used to be.
Yeah. Oh god, this is like I at my job sometimes I have to shred a lot of paper, right? Like we deal
Uh,
with important documents, and dude, it's so dusty. Like some of this paper's been sitting around for a long time, right? So like I, I'm so tempted every time I do it. Like after shredding like 400 pages or whatever, it's like man, I desperately want to get water on my hands, right? My hands are getting dried out a little bit and they're dusty and gross, but it's like I have to shred like 10,000 more pages today, so I can't. And it's literally one of the worst hours. It usually takes like an hour, hour and a half when we're doing the big shreds. Oh, it's such a terrible feeling to not be able to. Cause I could go, you know, make my hands feel less gross, but it would just feel gross again in like 10 minutes anyway, right? So
yeah, that's even worse when you already have dirty hands, you go wash them and then you have to go back to the dirt. That's just bad. That's just worse.
yeah, I
If
always
you combine water with the dirt, that's bad.
I always wait, and as soon as I finish shredding, I go to the to the restroom, wash my hands, and then it feels less bad. But I just can't stand the feeling of being dirty anymore. But as a kid, it didn't
Yeah,
bother me at all, and I assume for them actually, it probably like the shower's nice, but they probably actually don't mind the feeling of being dirty that much because
they don't really consider it, I think.
yeah, I know like I think Yuri doesn't consider it at all. Cheeto like tries to bathe like 2 or 3 times throughout the series, and she's sort of convinced Yuri to do it each time. Except
Yeah.
the hot springs. Cheetos or Yuri's really willing to do that because it's warm and nice, but every other time she doesn't really want it that much.
Yeah, like the comic thing. I heard you say the hot springs right now. I was like, yeah, the hot spring in the ceiling.
Yeah, it was like Well, it was like a pipe that they busted
Yeah.
open and then
Yeah.
created it. But yeah, let's see other things. So something that I wanted to talk about a little bit. Um, so there's only like four major human characters, right?
Yep.
And what do you guys think they represent? Or like what's like the important factors of them, I guess, if you don't wanna.
Let's see. If we start with Kanazawa, Mr. the Map guy.
Yeah.
Mr. the Map.
Representation isn't exactly something I was thinking about while I was watching the show.
Mhm.
But thinking about it in hindsight, I think he can represent like the human desire to document and like get an overlook over how things are. Because obviously he works with creating maps. He's trying to create a visualization of what the world around him is like.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that can be representative of how humans generally want to try and figure out why does this work that way? Why is the Earth the way it is, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I think Kanazawa can represent, at least.
Um, Infinite Zenith, Infinite Mariah WordPress. He's the only guy I'm gonna end up name dropping here. I'll put links whenever I put this on YouTube. I'll put links to other stuff that I read in the description. But like pretty much everything he said, pretty much everything everyone else said too. Or everything else that I've talked about, at least two people have said. But yeah, he agrees almost completely with you. He thinks that like he represents the tendency for people to document discoveries. And yeah, that's pretty much exactly what you said. Um, I'd add like a little bit to me. I think he a little bit is like humans' desire to explore is like a very, very big thing. There's like a quote from one of my favorite TV shows, um, about like why we need to go to the moon or why we need to go to Mars, right? And he's like the guy is a government employee, and the person he's talking to is like a citizen, like basically saying like we're wasting money going to Mars, and he's like the reason we have to is because it's next, because like humans came out of the cave and then we explored, our immediate surroundings, then we went overseas, and then we went to the moon, and now we have to go to Mars. It's next. Humans have to keep exploring. It's like part of what makes us human, right? So
Yeah.
even if it costs a lot of money to go to Mars, we have to because we just innately we want to. We want to keep exploring.
We don't want to run out of things to look at.
Yeah, it's like it's an
So
important.
like if we do that, we're gonna end up being bored, and humans hate being bored.
Yeah, we've gotten
And we're
really
like
good at trying to not be bored, but we're still bored.
yeah, we're one of the only species that I feel like we're one of the only species that consider something like boredom,
Yeah,
because we don't have to struggle for survival unlike other species. We just kind of live.
this is Jem told me about this, and I don't know remember if she had a source directly, but she mentioned there was like some study on boredom where there was like a person was locked in a room for like 24 hours or something, and the only thing that was in the room with them is like a device that would shock him, right? And he would
Hmm.
actually like the humans would typically like the people who were locked in there would actually end up shocking themselves like 3 or 4 times throughout like the time because they were so bored. They were like, "Yeah, I know this hurts, but like, I don't know, it's something, right?"
Yeah,
Um, so
it's some
yeah,
form of stimulation.
yeah, we're so desperate for stimulation, we'll like literally self harm. Um, if that's the only way we can feel something besides just like sitting in
Wait,
like a empty room.
would the shock be triggered by something, or was
Yeah,
it
Yeah,
just
you just do something.
it's
I
like a
can't
button.
remember
okay?
the specifics.
Yeah, basically, it's like a button that you press to shock yourself.
Oh, okay. So you've heard of this
Oh,
too?
Yeah, I've heard of this. Well, I think my source might be different from Jim's, but I've seen a similar experiment on Vsauce.
Okay.
Because Vsauce has a YouTube Red channel where it was basically called Mindfield, and it goes very deeply into like how the human brain works and stuff like that. I greatly recommend you look at them, even though you might have to pay. It's
Okay.
such a good series.
Yeah,
oh wow.
it's not impossible. That's where she got it too. But
They
I'll
they take yeah, they take like actual they take real experiments and show them to you. So you know the trolley problem where you have to like either
yeah,
pull a lever to kill one person or kill 5 people by not doing anything.
yeah,
yeah, they do an actual like test of that, but like obviously with very very major safety procedures, right?
Yeah.
So I just recommend going there because it really shows how the human brain can work at times.
Yeah, it's definitely like this is still this isn't like about Earth Lost Tour, but there's oh god, I'm blanking on the name. Oh, Cappy, you know the thing where the people end up going through with the test that kills the person with shocks? Oh god.
Yeah, and the security guard is like, do it, and they're like, no, but then they end up doing it anyway because they're pressured by the authority figure.
Yeah. Oh god, I'm blanking on what it's called
Yeah,
right
I don't know
now.
what it's called.
Oh
Uh,
no. There's this there's this really famous thing. Uh yeah, Google it please, see if you can find it.
Milgram experiment.
Yeah, the Milgram experiment. Where basically like if you have an authority figure in the room telling you to do something, you'll do stuff even if you know it's wrong and bad because in your head you can say, well, the authority figure told me to. It's like I'm not the bad guy; he's the bad guy for telling me to do it. Um,
yeah,
and yeah, it's a shocking number. Like essentially, you're given you have to test this guy on these quiz questions, and every time he gets one wrong, you shock him. And like inherently you know the last shock is going to be lethal because he's been screaming like bloody murder and before the last one he hasn't even said anything so like he might already be dead, right? um but still something like 80% of people end up doing the final shock anyway because there's a professor in the room telling you, well, you have to do it, it's part of the experiment, right? um
Yeah. So
so
they also assume that the blame will go on to the professor instead of him as an authority figure,
yep,
right?
they
It's like part of
figure
the reason they do it.
it's not their fault, the authority figure's telling them to do it, I'll defer to them, and then yeah. Occasionally there's people, there's like 20% of people that will eventually just say like, no, this is wrong, I refuse to do it. Like, if you want someone to shock them yourself. But um, the vast majority of people just go through with it, and yeah, it's a scary part of human nature, right? That we're willing
for
Yeah.
sure.
to do stuff like that. But yeah, uh, uh,
So that was Kanazawa.
yeah. Uh, Ishii he puts as like similar to Kanazawa, but like her he thinks is like the embodiment of human drive for innovation, and I can't really disagree with that or like really add anything to it myself.
Yeah,
So it's
Yeah, human drive for innovation. I can see that, but I feel like she's also kind of like a historian, considering she's using blueprints from the days of old to try and figure out how to construct this airplane.
yeah,
yeah,
She researches stuff that existed prior to something she might to what she knew, right?
yeah,
So she kind of takes that concept and develops onto it, which is something I like about her.
yeah. She like tries to take the thing. The only thing I'd say is like she's definitely like a documentarian type historian because like she doesn't try at all to help Cheeto or Yuri understand what she's doing. Um, and she doesn't care that like once she's gone, no one will understand, right? Like she specifically says at some point, I'm pretty sure that like um I'm probably the last human that like will ever understand like these blueprints, right? And she doesn't try to make that not a thing. So like she doesn't care about letting people Kanazawa wants people to understand his maps when he's gone, right? He wants like the maps to exist, whereas she
oh
wants
yeah,
the thing she made to exist. Um,
Yeah.
and she's willing to like look at history, and she wants to understand history, but she doesn't care so much about you know when she is history, it understanding her, right?
Yeah,
So
I can see that for sure.
yeah, and then
I was always
oh yeah,
yeah, I was always when it comes to Ishii specifically, I was always trying to I always try to figure out if the characters' names have any meaning. Ishii her name kind of translates directly to rock, so I couldn't really think of any specific
she
how
falls
that relates to anything. But
she
she felt
falls
like a
like a
rock,
rock
that's
in
for
the
sure.
end.
oh no, please,
Got him.
Yeah.
Um,
God. Well, okay, so actually, this might be kind of contradictory
mhm.
to like what we're talking about, but I feel like for um for Ishii, she was or she had the like drive and determination or whatever of like moving forward, even if it was kind of self-centered. Because like she was like, I want to fly across this ocean to see, kind of going back to that wanting to explore more
Hmm.
kind of thing. Whereas Kanazawa had like determination in terms of like, um, he was the cartographer of like the city. He wanted to like make a map of the city where it was more like his centralized.
Wait, centralizes in like
As well, because like he said he wants to make a map of the city,
mhm.
which is more like, I'm here, I'm just focusing on like doing my best area. Whereas Ishii was more like, I want to explore further and to go further into like the unknown.
Yeah, I definitely think she's part of the exploration thing too. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, Kanazawa to me just because like he, he he wanted to like explore everywhere so he could put it on the map, right? Like because once you finish the city, you want to go to the next layer to do it again. Whereas
Right.
Ishii like Ishii's also flight. Like flight's a big thing for humans in general, right? We've wanted pretty much every animal that's ever looked up at birds has been jealous, right? I think like I
Yeah,
guess you could argue that some animals don't have the ability to be jealous, but humans definitely do, and we've been jealous of birds since forever.
yeah, for sure.
So when we finally were able to fly ourselves, it was like a huge deal. There aren't birds, I guess, to be jealous of in Girls Love Stories. That's something, but like, yeah. So she's like a little bit of flight, and yeah, probably a little bit of exploration too, considering she wants to see like there was the city over the was it a sea or I don't remember what it was. Do you guys remember there was like you could see a
There was
city
like an
somehow?
ocean, and yeah,
Yeah, it was
you
like,
saw like the
yeah,
faint outline of another city.
Yeah, so she wanted to like
yeah,
go see what was up over there.
awesome.
Also,
Um,
this civilization, I just realized this civilization has to be like pretty freaking advanced, considering you see currently they're on a city where it's surrounded basically by ocean, right?
yeah,
And on the other end, you also see a city probably also surrounded by an ocean, meaning humans probably ran out of space to build like horizontally, so they decided to build up vertically instead.
yeah. That's like I think that's like a semi-popular thing in like fiction where it's like when humans start building vertically, that's when you know they're like really advanced because yeah, it means that they've already basically taken all the horizontal land.
Yeah.
Uh, Yuri and Cheeto, I feel like they almost don't represent something directly because like they are the eyes that we see through the show, right? Um,
Hmm.
but like for me, and I'm taking this mostly just based off of myself and not quoting anyone. A little bit quoting some guy named Bristle Bristle in too many words, but mostly this is my own stuff. Which like
Yeah,
Yuri is she's just like the human nature just like directly like she just cares about
yeah,
survival and feeling good. She's sort of like the ultimate glutton. She wants to eat, she wants to sleep, she wants to do things that make her happy, right? That's all she cares about is she's very food motivated. That's her primary thing, right? Where it's like eh, she reminds me
Yeah.
almost like Scooby Doo from Scooby Doo, where it's like if you had a Scooby snack, you could get Yuri to do pretty much anything you wanted her to do, right?
Yeah, Yuri takes a lot of pleasure in small things, which I think that can be like slightly representative. You know how people tend to take a lot of pleasure in small things like candies and like taking a snack, chilling.
Yeah,
Typical that I feel like Yuri represents a lot of that, and Cheeto doesn't
yeah.
in comparison.
Cheetos like Cheeto, I think, it's sort of like Hanazawa in that she documents like what they're doing, and she wants like someone to be able to read their journal like after they're gone, um,
Hmm.
and then she also takes a lot of pleasure in like reading. So she's I think she's almost more like a modern person, whereas Yuri's more like a not older but like a from a different age, right? Where it's like Cheeto likes stories, she likes getting engrossed in something, um,
hmm
in like in media basically, whereas Yuri basically doesn't even know what media is. Um,
Yeah,
so she just takes like pleasure in like what's around her, kind of like we probably had to back in olden times. And she doesn't even seem it doesn't seem like she even cares. Like she doesn't ask Cheeto to read her stories or anything. I don't think that she ever does. I think she might maybe one time, but like it's definitely not a common thing where she's like when Yuri's reading, she's not like, "Hey, what are you reading?" She's just sort of like, you know, playing with her gun or whistling or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Or singing to
you
herself.
can you can pretty clearly tell that Yuri isn't very concerned about that kind of literature or story, considering she almost burned Shido's book at one point.
Yeah, she burned the one, and then she almost burned the journal when she was mad at her. Well, she was mad at her for being mad. So she like considered burning the rest of her stuff, but instead she ended up she like wrote that page or whatever, or wrote. I put in air quotes because she doesn't know how to write. But just like draws in it.
Yeah.
But,
Whew.
it's
Man.
yeah.
Something that confused. I think this is the first episode. They had a flashback of like when they left their grandpa,
Mhm.
and it seemed like there was like a fight going, like breaking out, and like grandpa was like, "Oh shit, go go," but then like when they come back, they don't know anything about like the war or like what happened. So maybe it was just like a smaller. But it seemed like the fact there was like a fight going on was like there was people there.
Yeah.
Maybe like the last survivors was. I'm not sure. But,
They they seem to understand like that the war was over resources because Cheeto says something like that in episode one, right? But yeah, I don't think they really know specifics. I think they were sort of like they were the only kids in that were left in that group, so I think they were sort of sheltered from it. Is my interpretation of it, but like yeah, I don't think it's ever directly said. Um, and yeah, I feel like my only guess for why none of the adults escaped with them was just like they all felt sort of like tangentially responsible for the fighting going on because they all looked like they were in the military or whatever would pass for the military, right? So they probably didn't feel like they could in good conscience desert this final battle to go with the kids because they were part of why the battle was going on in general.
Yeah.
Also, we've been going for like an hour and I think we've hit all like the biggest points I care about. So like we definitely don't need to stop. But if you guys have any like specific points you want to jump to, we can do that. I don't need to like go through any of mine anymore.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I feel like I've already touched on everything that that I could think of at least.
Yeah. I guess I'm
Can
like.
we talk about?
Oh, you.
Hmm?
You.
I was no, I'm just gonna say a meme, but go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say there's the. Do you guys remember or Sev? Do you remember the scene at the very end when the camera like loads in and you see like all the little like images and stuff of like what had
Oh
happened?
yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
that was a really good moment. And there's like a part two where you see Kanazawa like with someone. Oh, and there's this. Let me see if I can find if I credited this guy. Um. Oh yeah, some guy named who on Reddit goes by oh shit it's Dr. Tran with at least one underscore between oh shit and it's Dr. Tran. His like hypothesis was basically that like the reason Kanazawa was like so obsessed with the maps is that like this girl was making maps with him, right? So then after she died, because we don't see her anymore, so we can presume she died. He just like kind of stuck with the maps as like a way to stay connected with her.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I think that's definitely a fair assessment. I just thought that was
Yeah,
like a sorry you.
he might have wanted to continue the work that I don't know if maybe she started it, but and he got attached to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would if that's the case, that would probably be the only representation of romance in this show as well, because I
Yeah.
don't think romance is ever talked about.
No, not at all.
It's not even considered.
There's only one guy that's ever introduced. And the only girls he's around at the time are like two prepubescent girls, probably. Or I guess we don't really know how old Yuri and Cheeto are, but fairly young, right? So,
Yeah.
um, probably not like within the correct age at all. But yeah, I thought, oh, that made sense. It was like an interesting
Yeah.
thing. Oh, did you have something to say, Cappy?
No, I was gonna say that I think, um it wouldn't have added to like the basic like what they're trying to go for.
Yeah. I watched like this is like not about Girls Lost Story, but I watched a video not too long ago, and it was the basic like idea of it was that lore is like one of the lowest forms of storytelling, and that like lore is basically telling you like the cool stuff that happened before without having to tell you the cool stuff that's happening now, right? And
Hmm.
I think the Girls Lost Tour does a pretty good job, and like it definitely enhances work. Like the person wasn't saying like the lore is worthless; they were just saying that like something that focuses too much on lore is not interesting, right? It's telling you cool stories that happened before, but not bothering to tell you the cool stories that are happening now. And the Girls Lost Tour does a pretty good job of like they sprinkle in like there is some sort of war that happens and it was over resources, I guess, but we're not gonna like overly explain it to you. And then in the final episode where you see like all the little like pictures and videos people took, right? You see like stuff going on in the background, but like they're not going to bore you with like not bore you, but they're not gonna waste a lot of their screen time telling you like exactly how society used to be, because that doesn't matter that much. What society is now is what matters, because like we're not telling you a story of what happened in this universe 30 years ago, 100 years ago, whenever this happened. We're telling you the story that's happening now. So I think they do a good job of like showing you enough lore stuff to be like, ooh, this world seems kind of interesting, without wasting too much of their precious. They only 12 episodes. They had like 5 hours to tell you the story, so they didn't waste like too much of it on like world building that it was never gonna have a payoff because that world doesn't even exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I've
Yeah.
one last little cool thing that I liked was they there's like an episode um where they're like when they first get to the second level, I think it is, or no, I don't know if it's second level, but it's the second level you see them on. They find these
Yeah.
like really dingy apartments, um,
Oh yeah.
and like they imagine like what it could be like if things were like optimal, and it's like even then it looks pretty dingy for like our standards, but like to them that would be like really good. And they talk about a little bit like, well, what makes a home, right? And
Yeah.
there's
Oh
like a cute moment where I think Yuri's the one who eventually answers the question, and she's like, well, like a home is where you feel the most comfortable, right? And I'm most comfortable when I'm with you or whatever. And it's like a cute little like uh
Oh.
yeah, they to them the home isn't like a house or anything. It's I think that's a cheesy thing that a lot of sitcoms do, where they talk about a home isn't where you live, it's where your family is or whatever. And it's like they've gotten to that level with each other, even though obviously, or not obviously, but I assume they're not actually related, right? Like, they don't really seem like they're related.
Yeah. No.
They've gotten to the level where
Probably
like
too different.
they definitely are like family.
They,
Maybe
they,
it's like
they might have the same grandparents, but they might have different parents.
yeah, I've always assumed that they call that guy grandpa, but he's not really the grandpa. It's just sort of like just
Yeah,
like
that
the name
works
they
too.
gave him, but like it definitely could be that he's actually their grandpa too, right? There's
yeah.
nothing in the story saying that he is or isn't. Um, that was just like a weird assumption I made because I assumed that they weren't related, but yeah, it's definitely possible that they are, that he's actually their
Yeah.
grandpa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is definitely a show where they don't tell you a lot of things, but it doesn't it doesn't detract in like a really negative way.
And
Um,
in fact, I think them not telling you much makes it better.
Yeah,
yeah, because like it's and like this is gonna sound bad. Well, maybe not, but like it's giving you like the bare bones basic connection between these two characters and the temporary connection, and then they have you mentally fill in all these gaps. And I feel like the way that different people can interpret things different ways, I feel like it really adds to how you can perceive the surrounding, how it really and how like it like assumes intelligence on the by not like
yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't handhold you or whatever. It lets you
yeah
and it doesn't waste too much time like trying to tell you, oh yeah, like this is this exact thing. Like they could have had like a whole flashback episode where they showed like how the war escalated to the point it got to or whatever. But like that doesn't really add much because the world is the way it is, right? So you just
I
get to
think the best
Yeah.
I think the best way of telling a story is telling it in a way where you don't have to tell it. Kind of, if that makes sense. Kind
I
of just like you represent the story without explicitly like like I feel
yeah
like the worst part is just having a narrator line up everything that's happened for you. I don't like
yeah
that.
it's
That makes me feel like I'm a baby or something.
there's like a really big thing I think in like movies, TV, or in general, it's like show don't tell, right? Where it's like you want a visual medium to show you what's going on. You don't want some narrator on the screen like saying, "Oh, and then the characters did this," or the more exposition is necessary sometimes, but excessive exposition is like not interesting, right? So you want
Yeah.
most of it to happen
Yeah.
on screen, and there's like very very little exposition. There might be no exposition at all in Girls Last Tour, depending on like how you define exposition.
It also depends on what media you're going through. Say if it's an anime like we're discussing right now, obviously it's gonna need to have. I mean, well, it doesn't need to have that much exposition. But if it's say I don't know a light novel, then you need it because people can't understand facial expressions through text. Kind
Yeah,
of.
uh, and
Yeah.
even like you're a big fan of Sword Art Online. I'm outing you. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like
You just threw me under the R anime bus. I'm gonna get assaulted now.
yeah, for something like
Yeah.
that, like when you first get into each world that the game takes place in, you need some exposition to understand how the world works because like you're not just gonna
Yep.
understand like how the universe is. You need a little bit of like when they first go to Alfheim or whatever, you need to understand. Oh, hey, magic is now a thing, and like you use it by saying the special words or by selecting it or whatever, right? Like
Yeah. You need to define the rules of the world they're in.
yeah,
Which in the case of an isekai show like that one where they enter multiple different quote unquote worlds, that's necessary. Otherwise, you're gonna get lost.
yeah.
Mhm.
You sometimes, especially when you're changing, and or you need someone to like understand something immediately because like a fight's happening or whatever, and you need them to understand like the stakes of it or how it works. Sometimes you need a little bit of exposition, but yeah, the you definitely don't want to spend like 5 minutes just like dumping exposition, uh,
Yeah, for sure.
because even if like what you're talking about sounds neat, it's still like it sounds neat. You're not showing me the neat thing. You're just telling me that like it could be really neat once we eventually show you how it works.
There are isekai shows where what they do instead is just kind of like they enter the new world, right? And then
Hmm.
there's like a big time skip where okay, this character has now researched everything about this world apparently. Now they know this and that and this and that without that ever we never saw that happen.
Yeah,
And
there was like Knights and Magic. Was that what the show is called? A couple
yeah,
seasons, or I say a couple seasons ago. I haven't been watching seasonally in 2018 at all, so it feels like a couple seasons ago, but it was like 6 seasons ago
it
or
was like
something now.
yeah, holy shit, that's a long time. What happened?
I think it's summer. It was summer or spring, 2017. But yeah, that
God
one.
damn.
That one literally he comes into the world and then they do like a huge time skip after like one episode or something, and then he's like fairly competent already.
July 2nd to September 24th,
That's summer, right? Summer 20.
2017. I think that's summer, yeah.
Yeah,
So September, yeah, that's summer. Because now it's fall and then winter starts in January.
yeah. So that was that show started decently, but it was it's a little bit of a meme overall. I don't want to get too very into Knife and Magic, but
Me neither.
it's definitely one
Uh,
of those shows though that does the time skip thing.
yeah, I don't like them when they do that. I like it when things are introduced to. You can explain the world through exposition, just don't do it in one sitting. Do it like over time.
Yeah, sprinkling it in between like the interesting stuff is definitely good.
Yep.
You watched Astro Square too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like when Claudia first takes him into the exposition room. It literally might as well be called the exposition room. Like
Exposition.
that is very like I don't think anyone was fooled because there was literally like flying exposition coming at you. They tried to make it visually interesting by having it like flying all around him, but like yeah, it was like actually directly exposition, like, and an entire room just like that existed to let him know about like this is the city you're in and this is like what goes on in the city, and it's like wow, like not only should he already know all this stuff, but like we don't need to be told. It can be sort of like it can be told like very in like very short periods, like where someone's like, well, this is like a city where people fight for money or whatever. That could have been like a line that some character just like said after there were people fighting for money, right? Like you didn't need to put it in one big thing.
Yeah, that's techniques of making a show better.
Yeah.
Take
So
note,
definitely,
production studios.
it's definitely like a it's when you're adapting a work to a different medium, you've definitely got to understand like how the medium works, and like in a book everything needs to be stated outright or like thought, so you can understand it, because there's no visuals, right? Like a light novel is like 10 visuals per book or something, or maybe 12 or 13 if you count the colored ones at the start. But like those colored ones at the start, this is like a minor rant for me, those are like basically spoilers. Like uh whenever I read a new one, I actually skip to like the first page that doesn't have any of the illustrations and then read and then go back to the illustrations at the start, because like I understand why they put them at the start, because they want like people to like flip through the book when they're in the bookstore and be like, oh hey, these look neat. But I don't live in Japan. I don't buy books from a bookstore. Uh, so I don't need to be sold on the book. I've already bought it if I'm reading it, right? And they're
I
literally showing you like
completely agree with
scenes.
you.
I sent you pictures from like books before. And yeah,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
colored pictures, they're literally just at the start. So like sometimes they'll like be major scenes that are like things that happen in the book. And it's just like, yeah, well, I don't want to see that before I've read it. But yeah, uh, there's just like 10 or so pictures throughout the whole thing, that are like actually interlaced with the book. So it's like you can't rely on pictures to tell the story. Manga you can, right? Manga has pictures
Yeah,
constantly. So
yeah. Manga uses that all the time. But the thing you just mentioned, how the first couple pictures are spoiler.
yeah.
There's a thing that has the exact same effect as that, and that's called the opening of an anime.
Oh yeah. I
Way too
sometimes skip
often.
them.
It was so often I get a little bit pissed when I see spoilers in an opening. God, that's one of the most triggering things ever.
Yeah. It's sort of, this is like super off topic, but did you watch Naruto at all when you were like a kid or a while ago?
I watched the entirety of the first Naruto and then I stopped partway through Shippuden.
Okay, so the very first Naruto intro has like a bunch of made up fights in it. I remember there's like that one really big fat guy that they fight in it, and I remember like Naruto's just like cool combination with his clones against him. And I remember like as a kid watching that and being like, man, I can't wait till I see that part in the show.
That's the same. I agree.
And then it never happened, and I was like, oh no, like because I don't know, but I think it's probably definitely better to like have fake stuff in there that shows you like the general idea of like him getting. I guess like I mean he does do combos with his clones eventually. Like the whole Kiba fight is like one big combo with his clones to win. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, they did a good job of not spoiling anything by just making their own stuff up.
Yeah. Not spoiling is good. Baiting is still a little makes me a little salty though.
Yeah, that was a fight I definitely wanted to see, but um, I
See,
sometimes with shows I'll close my eyes during the OP, so I can listen to the nice song the first time, and then once it's all over, I'll like actually watch it. But that's only if I
yeah.
feel that's only if I start watching it and then I start feeling like okay, I'm seeing stuff that like is spoilery. The big spoilers that almost all OPs have too is they show important characters that aren't there until later. So then when the character shows
Recent,
up, you're like, oh hey, I know that you're important.
yeah. Recently, I've started watching or at least listening. I started listening to the entirety of OPs and EDs
Mhm.
for a very specific reason, and that is I want to fill out the entire orange bar on Crunchyroll. It
Oh,
triggers me when it's not fully filled out.
so I'll a lot of times I used to watch when I watched weekly. I would watch the OP to like get into the mood of the series, right? Because I felt like it's
Mhm.
always a good like mood setter, because like the OP is in theory supposed to be like a song that represents the show. And then for the ED, a
Yeah.
lot of times I would mute but let it run because I also hated the Orange Boy. And unless it was an ED I really liked, then I'd listen to it in the background. But like I would almost never watch it because like by the time I've watched 20 minutes of anime, I'm ready to go do something else for a couple of minutes. So yeah.
There's this show that's still ongoing. Remember Black Clover that started like over a year ago?
Yeah, it was supposed to be 1 year long, and then they've recently said it. No, it's longer. That was just like the 50 episodes was
Yeah.
just the first bit of it. They're still gonna keep going.
Yeah, I'm still watching that. It's on episode 56 right now, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say it's not a very good show per IMO,
Mhm.
but its OPs and EDs can be a jam.
Yeah, I've heard
So it's like I can sit there and listen to them.
the general consensus seems to be that it's gotten better over time. So
Yes, it's for sure it has.
yeah.
It was super annoying early on, but once you get past like the first 10 episodes, it's like, okay, this is getting better, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the. I'll probably read the manga for Black Clover because it seems good. Maybe I'll end up watching the show at some point, but never-ending shows are definitely tough for me to get into.
Yeah, okay, I'm already far in, so I think I'm good.
Yeah,
I'll live.
definitely. That's half the reason I stopped watching Exorcist. But we haven't been on topic in forever, so I think this is a good time to cut it.
Yeah, I've
Hopefully.
also realized that we've called the stream for Punctuality test the entire time.
Oh my god, I changed it, but I didn't click update information.
There we go. Okay,
There I
we're on
clicked up.
topic, guys.
Maybe I'll edit the VOD or whatever to make it say the right thing. But yeah, this was the
Okay.
first the first episode. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you later.
Okay.
Fare thee well.